I'm delighted once again to welcome Elvira Bary to the channel, who is an author, researcher, and a creator working in the intersection of storytelling, self-discovery, and political insight. And let's face it, there is an awful lot to write about, especially trying to find some kind of positivity or solution-oriented narratives in the doom and gloom. She also runs an insightful YouTube channel on Russian politics, history, and culture, and explores how Russia came to be the shape it is, came to act the way we currently see it acting. So if you haven't checked out our channel, I strongly advise it. There are some extraordinary episodes in there and themes into some of the darkest psychology behind Russian history and Russian actions, which I think are important for many people to explore, to understand what's going on, and not just understand, but also counter it and support Ukraine and remain resilient and look to the horizon because I think we still believe that there may be some positivity that can emerge from all of this misery. Elvira, welcome back to the channel.
Yeah. Hi. Hi, thank you for having me again.
That's a long and rambling introduction there, but let's sort of dive in because there's an awful lot of stuff happening, and now we have the um, I think the nuclear coercion has reached a kind of fever pitch. And of course, a lot of people, as they have throughout this war and prior to it, they take these threats at face value as real. And it does deter, and it has deterred governments from supporting Ukraine to victory. It has deterred, not fully, but it's deterred enough so that we see 4 years of defeat and victory constantly being on a knife edge. Whereas without that nuclear deterrence, it's quite possible to imagine that in late 22, 23, that we could have given Ukraine what it needed to end this far sooner. So I think this nuclear angle is absolutely critical. And of course, it's wheeled out whenever the Kremlin feels that either its position is weakening or that it feels the allies behind Ukraine are strengthening in their support. It comes out like, so what's your take on this? Are we right to be fearful, or should we treat this as some kind of, let's say, sick pantomime?
The main idea that, I wish everybody understood it, that Russia is the only industry that works well in Russia is creating fakes and creating illusions. This machine was inherited from the Soviet Union, and it was created back in the Soviet times. And since World War II, Russia worked on this fear. It created fear, it created illusions. And since I was born in Russia and I know what it was during the Soviet times, when I talked to my American friends and they said that we were so scared of Russian menace, I was like, why? Seriously. We were poor, dirt poor. We, everything was collapsing. And how on earth they believed that the army and the nuclear forces are in any better shape than everything else? No, the whole society from top to bottom was in the state of disintegration, basically. And so what it allows the government to achieve, basically, and I'm recording a video exactly about this, that it's mimicry. So that's the mechanism that allows a weaker species to pretend being something else. Like a butterfly has these eyes on its wings, pretending to be a bird, or some ants pretending to be spiders. Because if you can be strong, then you can pretend to be strong and achieve your goals. And that's exactly what the Russian government, probably since the death of Stalin, tries to do. Because the arm race that began in 1950s left Russia so behind that it was impossible to wage war. So again, there's a famous Madman theory, and a lot of politicians try to play this card. Nixon or Donald Trump sometimes. Putin wants to use this too. So what is madman theory? It is a deliberate behavior when you try to pretend that you are mad. You're nobody can no nobody can predict your next action, and that is why you instinctively try to please this person or avoid this person or just don't want to mess with him. And it just gives you additional strength, additional trump cards, basically, at the game of geopolitics. But again, we always before we start examining is this nuclear threats are real or not, we need to put ourselves in the shoes of the decision makers in Kremlin. Who are they? What do they want? Do they want to spend their last days? They are old people, but they all have mistresses, families, several marriages, kids. Many of them have a lot of kids. Do they want their kids to spend the rest of their days in their bunkers somewhere underneath of the destroyed Moscow? Seriously, no. Their whole life was spent on accumulating wealth. Look at what Putin wants for himself: a palace in the nice place, Galinjik, next to the warm sea. What does he want? What entertains him? He wants a stadium, ice field, uh, aqua disco,
Mudroom, was it?
streamers,
Community Gräse. Yeah, yeah.
casinos. He is separate. Is it the right word in English? Yeah, the one who
Yep.
yeah, enjoys life and basically physicality. That's what he truly values that. That's why he changes women all the time. That's why he loves gold. And the only thing that is common between Donald Trump and Vladimir Putin is this thirst for physical pleasures. We can see that the same patterns: women, uh, excitement while playing, and gold, a lot of gold.
A certain greed possibly there, a certain possessiveness, one would imagine as well,
Possessiveness,
yes.
yes. It's not, in both cases, it's not about money, because those men are beyond money already. It's about having stuff, chasing something that if I want this, I have to grab it. This kind of behavior. So back to the nuclear threats. No, they don't want nuclear war, and they like chances are very very slim that they will. Of course, they could be like some crazy decision, because Putin is aging very very quickly, and if we compare his speech now and like 10 years ago, it's a different man. And apparently he has problems with perceiving reality, because he's under stress. 3 years of stress. Again, his personality type, he's cold. He doesn't have much empathy. But deep inside, he is not bloodthirsty. It's contradictory. People may think like, no, it's not like that. No, the image he wants to project to the public is that I am a great man. He wants to be loved. He wants applauses, and he doesn't want to be next Genghis Khan. No, he just made mistakes, and he makes mistakes because he doesn't have the connection with the real life, because he's afraid of people, and he trusts only his cronies, and his cronies report him just lies. And that's why it shapes his vision of the world. He makes wrong decisions, and he is really afraid of pain and degradation, physical degradation.
And
That is
people find
why.
that difficult. I think people find that idea really difficult. But let's look at what he's actually done. In the years he's been in power, he has surgically sacrificed competitors. He has sacrificed journalists and those who threatened his status. And the war is nothing but him scaling up the costs in other people's lives that he's prepared to save his own skin. So that what you say rings true. It's a form of extraordinary cowardice and self-centeredness that you're willing to sacrifice 1 million, 2 million people to save your
Because he
own
doesn't
skin.
believe,
Yeah.
yeah, your life, my life, everybody else's life, they are nothing because the Russia is the has case systems in it. People who belong to the high caste, they consider themselves much more important than everybody else. And as for foreigners, they don't see them as humans at all because they were not exposed to the foreigners. Again, that's natural. That's nothing. It doesn't. It says nothing about like their cruelty or like special evilness. Is it the right word?
Just evil.
Evil,
Yeah.
just like being evil. No, because for human beings who were not exposed to any foreigners, foreign ideas, foreign travels, who doesn't know foreign languages, can speak fluently, they 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 just see them as some entities, some ghosts. Just a
And the
second, I need
caste we're
to
talking
open the
about,
door for the dog. Now he wants
let
to
the
come.
dog in. Um, the caste we're talking about is not just a ruling caste, is not just a rich caste. He is part of a caste which Andrei Soldatov, aptly named his book "The New Nobility" when talking about the new Siloviki class. So you have a caste that emerged, I guess, from the NKVD, Cheka, then through to the KGB, and now these various organs. We've got the GRU and SVR. You've got a few flavors of it, but they
Mhm.
consider themselves to be the wolves among sheep. They consider themselves as Nevzorov constantly, refers to the Russian population as kind of cattle. And I think this is probably what Putin and his clique will view the
Exactly.
others as material cattle, nothing but, flesh to be wasted.
Mhm, mhm. Yeah, exactly. Again, since they are not very educated people, and they grew, Putin grew up in the back alleys of Leningrad, now St. Petersburg, and his mentality is like of a small crook. He always tries to manipulate people and find another route, find the way to cheat, because and he genuinely believes that the whole world is made exactly like that. He doesn't believe in any goodwill, any honesty, any compassion. He believes if you what was that? It was a cartoon from the 90s, I guess, about the ant hill and the grasshoppers who attacked ant hills and asked the tribute. Probably you saw it. That's
I
exactly
haven't
that's the
seen that
person.
one. No, I
No,
don't
no,
know
you
that one. No.
yeah, so the idea was that there's an ant hill with ants working hard to build their home, to improve everything inside it. Then the grasshoppers attack them and ask the tribute, and they grab someone, torture him, and show the others that you will be next. And that's how they make the whole anthill working for them. They don't contribute, they don't, but they believe that they deserve this tribute because they are stronger. Actually, what is look like is a mentality of a gang. Like in bad areas in Los Angeles, gangsters do exactly the same. They have the territory and they believe that those who live there, they just have to bring them money or whatever they have. And you can't refuse because since I'm stronger, I deserve it. I was chosen. They all those people, they always superstitious because there's no another explanation but the divine forces chose me to be strong, to to be able to oppress other people, and they always believe. Again, if we see uh, the tombstones from mafia from Italy or from South America or from Russia, they always try to communicate with the divine, with the higher forces, because they truly believe that they can actually have an agreement with that with it. They always in this field. And another thing that we need to keep in mind about the Russian upper class is they are all superstitious. They all consult with astrologers, palm readers, shamans, and at the same time Christian monks. They believe in all this. Why? Because they need proofs that they deserve their being at the top of the social ladder. Because that's the only legitimacy they have. There's nothing else. There's no another explanation why these old men just have everything that is Russian and can kill anybody, and can decide the fate of everybody. That's just not fair. But if you believe that you were chosen by some divine forces, then that's okay. So this mentality explains a lot. So there's no nuclear threat on the horizon because these guys, they don't want, they are not fanatics. All fanatics ended in the 1937 and 1938, when Stalin destroyed the earlier generation of the Bolsheviks who truly believed in the socialist cause. After that, no, no.
And of course,
After
this also helps to explain a little bit something which is, a friend of mine, Vlad Vexler, talks about this a lot, which is the fact that we're not just dealing with a tyrant with a regime that's brittle, and that using those kind of explanations doesn't get nearly close enough to explaining what we're seeing. The same as when you take so-called realist geopolitics and try to look at this as some rational game of chess on a global scale. That doesn't really fit and explain it. But the idea that you already have a grounding in suspicion, extreme paranoia combined with, as you say, the sort of belief in supernatural, looking for signs and patterns that confirm your special place. It then becomes far easier to see how this might be, you know, entwined with mystical history. And we know that Putin wrote this or collaborated in this extraordinary, ludicrous historical monograph, just full of nonsense and
Mhm.
self-aggrandizing, self-supporting, delusional rubbish. But actually, it's not such a big leap from thinking of your own personal path to becoming dominant as mystical, to then entwining that with some mystical fate or mystical processes around your country. And as we see it, it spills out across the borders and now around the world. But that transition is less surprising if we think of it that way.
Yeah, so I believe that if I were the consultant of some special forces, I would invest in creating an alternative reality from the divine and send some messages like Tibetan monks predicted that uh, one person somewhere in the north, in Russia, who lives in a beautiful city with stars above it, has a potential to overthrow the tyrant and save the Russian people from the oppressors. The whole world will applaud him, and he will bring peace and prosperity for the country. And the future generations will never forget what he does. And from Tibetan monks, from Mexican shamans, from Pope in the Rome, or someone divine, something divine. What will it will steer their confusion? Because Russian elites read all all information about like how they perceive me. It's basically like a person who is trying to find out what Google says about him or her. They do it all the time.
We're not too
So
far from the plot of Macbeth or even Harry Potter here, are we? Then a prophecy becomes self-fulfilling as the
yep, exactly.
autocrat. Yeah.
Yes, creating an alternative because what's going on right now in Russia that since for quarter of the century basically there was a special filter that didn't allow capable and well-educated people with conscience and some morality. It didn't allow them to to basically grow their career in Russia, they moved out,
Mm.
or they just stay where they are. And that means that let's I'll just explain you how it works. For
Mhm.
example, let's take the some organization, government organization like Roscosmos. If there is if the boss of Roscosmos is an organization that is managing the space programs in Russia, if he knows nothing about the field and he wants to steal money from the budget, and he is the only one who can allocate those money from the budget, and everybody depends on him, he has a bad temper, he yells at his subordinates, and that means that everybody who is capable, they will leave because nobody wants to work at this environment. And that is why Russian space programs doesn't succeed, because capable people are just moving out. And that's how and he puts his own acquaintances and friends on the very important positions inside this organization. They know nothing about space. They want to, you know what, I need to tell you one thing. Like right now I'm writing a novel about the Russian the war in Ukraine. And my characters, they graduated from MAI. MAI is the Moscow Aviation Institution. And this morning, what I did, I went to the websites and started just Googling what the students say, their videos, YouTube. I was shocked. This was the crown jewel of Russian science, the Soviet science, because that was space programs, the aviation engines, like this kind of stuff that actually project power into the outside world. And I was shocked at how vintage everything looks. The girls, the students, the boys, they are like every student in the world. They're rose cheeked, they're like smiling, girls with long hair, and everything is old. Like behind them, the dorms, there's the buildings of the university, the asphalt. It looks like it was from the 80s with some patches of repairs from the 1990s.
And
And
it
the only
is, yeah. I mean, it
yeah,
absolutely is. If you've
it
seen,
looks so
yeah,
depressing. And all the only new thing that I noticed there was the cafeteria. The cafeteria, probably because they make money, good money, coffee shops, but equipment, even teachers. I just start researching like what's going on in the institution, and I I love to visit universities. That's my pleasure. Like everywhere, every time I travel somewhere, I usually go to the university just because I love their atmosphere. I love to be there, and I can't compare. It's so depressing, just unbelievable how everything degraded. And
I've got
I'm
a good
pretty sure.
example of that. I saw, I mean, he's not in the country anymore, but Ilya Varlamov did
Hmm.
obviously a lot of episodes, but he did one in Vorkuta, and
Hmm.
that's a town I've been to,
Oh,
curiously enough,
oh.
yeah. Um, it looked in a far better state in 1998 when I was there than in
Hmm.
Varlamov's videos 25 years later, and that was deeply shocking to see the
Hmm.
degradation. Not that it stayed the same, that it's actually got far worse, or many of the areas had.
That's so. Again, I know that they steal money. I know that the corruption in the high education sphere is huge, and they use the buildings, the money allocated for science for their private purposes. But I didn't expect that if the state tries to project their military power, and basically aviation is such an important component of the military forces, they need these engineers, they need these young forces, people who know what to do with their engines, with the space. And how on earth can they compete with the West if there's such situation? And you know
No.
what, like Yesterday, I came up with a very interesting idea that actually shocked me, and it's aligned perfectly well with what I saw today while researching this institution. You know what? If we notice that every time when we see the power shifts, like major power shifts in history, there's a technological breakthrough or organizational breakthrough. Like, for example, the first Chinese emperor, Qin Shi Huangdi, how he could conquer the other states and create the first Chinese empire because he created a new organizational structure that allowed him to manage vast armies. And if we see in the Middle Ages, we notice that every single king was prevailing only if he has a strong heavy cavalry, and strong heavy cavalry are knights. But you can grow the knight without allowing him to have villages who will support him, because being a knight, it's not like training. You can train a knight in 2 months. It's a lifelong commitment. A noble family should invest all what it has into upbringing a young man to be a knight, because it's a very, very physically demanding job. And if you have a lot of them, that means that you can conquer your neighbors or defeat them in the battles. And every king has, if he wants to survive, he needed this knighthood, the knights, and he has to share his resources and power. And the knight who has this base, economical base, of course, he felt somehow independent. That's why we don't see the absolute power in the Middle Ages. It doesn't work like that. But what happened in the 17th century, a little bit earlier, but in 17th century, when the relatively small guns appeared, then we can train a peasant, well, like a commoner, for 2 months or 3 months, and he can kill this knight. So the king, he doesn't need the knights anymore. And the kings were the kings were the only one who can produce those guns in the mass quantity, right? And that is how they have power over the knights. And that's how they build this absolute power, the absolute monarchy, starting with Louis the 14th, and then in Russia, Peter the Great, and all the others, because they could suppress their nobility. They don't need them anymore for the war. They could pay like peanuts to peasants, gave them rifles, and those peasants will defend them. And this exactly model continued up to the end of the 20th century. All the Russian soldiers in World War II were like peasant boys with rifles. That's it. No training, no education, nothing. But now, in this war, we are entering the new stage. Then you can train the drone pilot. But to grow a person who can build drones or build microschemes or deal with artificial intelligence, we are back to this stage where it's the same as it was in the Middle Ages, when the knight producing a knight demands an effort of the family, and it takes 20 years or more. Same here.
Education, large middle
Education,
class, professions,
exactly.
status takes money, as you say. That education
Money,
doesn't come.
money, efforts of the family, not the state. You can train an engineer, so like, boom, now you are an engineer. No, it doesn't work like that.
Plus, it
Which
requires an ecosystem. I think this is the bit that actually a lot of Western governments are missing the point of. You can't just build a factory and off you go, you're making drones, because they are iterated so rapidly. What you need is a large, thriving tech sector. And what you
Mhm,
need for a tech sector is innovation and freedom, fundamentally, rule of law and freedom, as well
exactly,
as all of this. But this is,
exactly,
look at Skolkovo. Skolkovo is a miserable failure.
ex-
It
exactly.
seems opposite to the hierarchical, punitive system built on humiliation, which still
Mhm.
functions in Russia.
But it can compete because what happens in Russia or any authoritarian society, the system allows people who belong to the upper class to steal money. They are above the law, that's why they can steal money. But since there's no law, they don't feel protected and they want to move out. So they send out their kids and money because they want to protection, which means they create an environment in which everybody who has any kind of resources try to dock their money and family somewhere else where the law can protect them. And this is the difference. And this contradiction can be solved. You can't have both technological advancement and lawless state. It doesn't work like that. And that is why Russia, as it is, has zero chances to win in the long run. It's technically impossible.
Mm.
So the point is that the Western world should predict what's going on and try to soften the blow because the Russian collapse, we already see the cracks. This authoritarian, they try to squeeze the money from population. They try to force the population to wage war, and the population doesn't want to. And we can see that the interest of the government on all levels contradicts the interest of the general population. And it can't end there won't be any happy ending. It's impossible.
And of course, some people
So
find it difficult to understand how come, therefore, can you get hundreds and hundreds of thousands of people to physically go and wage that war, and not in a sophisticated way, because mostly, it's the so-called meat wave, and it's people from the provinces. How is it possible then? And it's a very Tolstoyan question, these huge historical processes. How can you convince so many people to behave in this way? I think we underestimate the role of money and the fact that many of the people who are going into this war are impoverished and have been kept impoverished for precisely this purpose. They've been kept ignorant, lacking education, lacking infrastructure, lacking access to resources and opportunity, and poisoned, as we know, with alcohol and all the other distractions, as it were, that benefit a regime. I mean, this is why they keep such a huge number of their population in this sort of state, because they require the kind of servility every generation to, okay, well, now we're going to
yeah, the
conduct
same
these wars.
yeah, if we want to understand this mechanism, how it works, we should remember the sovereign slave owners. They didn't want their slaves to get any kind of education. Even they don't want them to even read and write, because if a person can read at least a newspaper, that's already dangerous. So education can do wonders, I would say, because like the Bolsheviks could commit such atrocities and keep in power only having like 80 plus something percentage of population uneducated. As soon as they teach them, and they had to teach them because otherwise they couldn't compete and create a military machine to conquer the world. But as soon as they teach them, the third generation didn't believe in communism at all, like zero. So education killed the Bolshevik ideas. And same happens right now in Russia. The old guys in Kremlin, they can say like they always appeal to the past. But the younger generation doesn't want to be in the past. They want freedom, they want travel the world, they want good wages, they want money. And what happens in those in those rural areas, it's so depressing. Like um again, like while I'm writing the novel, I ask my Ukrainian friends to send me the connection, the footage about like what's going on the front line. And several days ago, I was just like watching the interview with the captive, the Russian prisoner of war. Oh,
Zulkin or
no.
Apostol. No,
It
no,
was
no, no.
I was watching the videos from this specific brigade, Ukrainian brigades. They just captured this guy and they just recorded the interrogation. It was not staged. It was not in the
Mm,
studio. It was just like
no.
in the fields. raw
Very
as it is.
raw and immediate. Yeah.
Yeah. So it was, oh my God. So what I saw was a guy, very small, physically small, thin shoulders. He was definitely hungry. He has like awful teeth, like awful. And he's probably 23 or 25. And the guy asks him, like, why? Why are you here? He said, like, because NATO attacked us. Okay, what is NATO? He doesn't know. Where and when NATO attacked Russia? I don't know how it happened. Some Abrams tanks attacked us. What is Abrams tank? I don't know. So basically, he knows nothing. And the guy, the interrogator, asked him like, how did you end up here? And the prisoner of war told him, you know what? I was a driver in the some grocery stores chain, like in Bashkortostan, some rural area. Not Bashkortostan is a province, and this is the far corner of this far province. And he said that I had a fight with my girlfriend. I hit her. She reported me to the police, and in the police they told me that you have two choices: go to prison or go to war. And he chose to go to war. And the interrogator asked him like, "How did you have any training?" He said, "About 3 days or so." But nobody cares. The teacher doesn't care. The instructor doesn't care. We didn't care. We just sat there drinking vodka, and that's it. And after that, he was sent to the front lines, and they told him that he will be a driver because that's his profession. But no, it's impossible to drive any vehicle in the front. And they made him a runner. Runner is a person who actually has a backpack and has like toilet papers, like instant noodles, water, like usual stuff for the soldiers. And his job is to run through the minefields or wherever it is there, several kilometers. He can, and then after he drops his cargo, he goes back. That's his job. Those runners,
Does
they're
it all
exposed.
over again. Yes.
Yeah, they killed all the time because Ukrainian drones, they just watch them from the sky, and they usually go at night. Otherwise, it's too dangerous. And the interrogator asked this prisoner, like, "How did you get captured?" The guy said, "It was night. My commander told me, just take the backpack and go to the. You will see the red light somewhere, and just go there." And he said, "There's no any red light." And then the commander just took his rifle and told him, "If you won't go, I'll kill you." And so he went. And then he said that he hid in some ditch. And after that, it was shelling. And after that, he was shell shocked, and the Ukrainians just captured him. I looked at him, and it was like, what am I looking at? The young man, he's just basically wild. He's not even evil. He doesn't understand what's going on. He doesn't understand how on earth he ended up here. It's like taking a medieval peasant boy from the 16th century, 15th even. and, and they gave him modern weapons and sent him to fight for the Tsar decided. And that's it.
That's it. Yeah. Yeah.
And the guy said that when they captured me, I thought that they will cut off my ears because that's exactly what the commanders told him. And no, Ukrainians gave me food. They even gave me a small bottle of Pepsi Cola. So he said like they feed us here in captivity better than in the trenches. And I was like, oh, it's pathetic. It's shameful to watch. And, and you know that that's That's what Russian state it is right now. It produces this. The horde of medieval peasants, like fighting for what?
And it
They
doesn't
don't
create any kind of moral framework. So this person may not even see or understand the evil he's perpetrating
no,
because
no, zero understanding.
the
And
hierarchy of humiliation when he goes back home, if he goes back home, is not so different. You know, you are in a hierarchy where you are abused, and in turn you will relieve your emotional pressure maybe by abusing others. And he probably won't see, you know, there won't be some great sort of moral moment of enlightenment like I have done wrong. I mean, this is
no, no,
unlikely.
yeah, because they live in the 15th century. Their morality is, again, there's our own ancestors were like that. That was the survival code back then. Like you see humans only your immediate family and friends. That's it. Like your neighbors in your village, and everybody else is trying to attack you. That's why they are not humans. That's why you have to fight them anyway, because they are all of them are evil for you personally. So that's their view of life. And the only solution is just to break this oppression machine and help somehow educate the elites and educate and try to educate the people who were deprived, deliberately deprived any chances in life. Because that's they right now they try to install propaganda in the heads of the youth, because they know that now they have to pay such huge sums to the soldiers to go to the front, and the budget can do it. It's impossible right now. There's such a huge budget deficit that the state is almost bankrupt.
And
They
of course,
need,
if India and China stop
yeah.
buying the oil, which there's a
Mhm.
possibility at least India may stop, then you've got serious compounding problems there.
Yep. Yep. And it's layer after layer after layer of troubles, and it will eventually break their camel's back. There's no other
Let's
choice.
turn to the educated classes because
Hmm.
Moscow and St. Petersburg, Ekaterinburg, and some of the big centers, you do have, they're not huge by Western standards, but you do have professional classes. Um, Many left in 23, 22 and 23 when the first mobilization wave came. Some left in 2014, not that many, but a few did. But there were huge waves of this emigration. But Putin has also tried to make it clear that unless you're in a vulnerable minority or you're, a worker come from Central Asia or something like that, they're more or less going to allow you to forget there's a war on. You go to your cafes and your restaurants and your parks and your galleries, and you can pretend that none of this is really happening and create this sort of compartmentalization, which a lot of people have that left over from Soviet Union because again, compartmentalization of your world into private and public is a mechanism you had to have. And I had an interesting conversation with some friends here, and I was asking, well, what sources do you look at? Because yes, they're keeping in touch with what's going on in the war, but there's a range of different sort of dissenting voices from the ones I would listen to, let's say Michael Naki on the one hand, very strong moral tone, but I would say very sort of balanced. Then you've got Alexander Nevzorov, who is we know Nevzorov is one of the inner elite, and he's you know something almost like a sort of Count Dracula or something. He has this extraordinary dark theatricality about him, and the things he talks about and the language he uses is visceral and it's harsh and it's painful. And the things he talks about are really grimmer, I think, far grimmer even than the way we discussing this. And my friend said, he said, oh, well, I said, I'll listen to Maxim Katz because it's not as harsh. It's not as like I know Nevzorov is saying painful, true things, but it's too much. I can't deal with it. I want my, I want my reality to be critical of the regime, but softer. And I found that, yes, I sort of get it, but I also found that quite a disturbing thought.
He's an actor, and he always was like that. Nevzorov is a very, very talented actor he just found his niche, and he
He's a
knows that.
propagandist, though. He's got a propagandistic
I
anti.
wouldn't say that. He is not propagandist. You know what? He is like all us YouTubers. We found our niche, we find our approach, and when we see that this hits the nerve, that this brings us response, we just continue to do what people like. So he found this way, this approach. Some part of the Russian intelligentsia, Russian public, they love his harsh words. They enjoy it because he can find the right words in their minds to name the things, and he just delivers. Because what else does he have? He lost a lot of his money, his status, everything. So he has only his audience. So he delivers what the audience wants. Simple. Yeah, so the problem with the Russian educated class is that we are descendants of people who were brutally crushed by the regime. And our ancestors learned how to survive. Just yesterday, I was watching the very good, very, very difficult to listen, but very good podcast about the Gulag economy, how it works, how they used hunger to manipulate people. And when I listened to it, I know that my grandfather was there in Gulag as a prisoner for 5 years. My husband's great-grandfather there. Like in every single family, there was somebody who was in Gulag, and which means that it's in the family, that you have to watch your back all the time, because the government can harm you so much that you won't even survive, and it's impossible to fight it back because the whole mighty machine will just crush you down, and it's impossible to do anything. And since you know that your ancestors suffered from it, and it's no joke at all, and they came back, those who came back actually had children, because millions died, just perished. And when they learn how to find the way, how to please their bosses, how to obey and still survive and do what you want. There's a saying, like a Pavlov's dog, right? That if
Yep,
you teach a dog to be afraid of the sound, next time you don't even have to apply violence. It's
that's
enough.
it.
Sound is enough.
You know the story of Pavlov, don't you? Do you know yeah, it's dark. It's
Sorry,
incredibly
but
dark, yeah. And the Bolsheviks built him an institute because they saw the value of that kind of imprinting of ideas based on someone who is in a state of terror and starvation. They realized that no matter how irrational the ideas, you can imprint them on someone's brain so that even when they emerge from a state of extreme hunger and deprivation, those fears and those ideas are permanently imprinted. So
mhm.
terrible, terrible understanding of
I
human.
see it. I see it when I talk to my relatives, like older generation. When I talk, I even feel it myself. Like what? Like I'm in California. I'm writing my book. I'm constantly thinking that how it will affect my future. Again, the book is not finished. I'm just working on it. But still, I'm thinking like, can they do something to me? Because again, I don't have even a publisher, but this fear, it's real. It governs me. It occupies my mind, and I can't get rid of it. And no psychologist will help me with it because I was grew up when I was a little girl. My grandmother told me, when you go to the street, always look around. That was her like proverb in Russian. It's rhymes, and so like you go out and you look around. you should watch your back because the danger is everywhere. You don't know who can attack you. Yep. Yeah,
That fear
we're
never quite goes away. I mean, the book that exemplifies that for me is Venezia Refiev, Moskva Patushki. That very idea of that absolute horror that's waiting at the end of a journey, and the journey is cyclical. And of
Mhm.
course, as an intellectual, he wasn't allowed to publish, and I think he a boiler stoker. That was a classic job of an intellectual, stoking boilers, collecting bottles to recycle. You get money to buy alcohol with that, and of course, he was a
Oh yeah, it's such a
extraordinary
sad
alcoholic. Yeah.
period. Yeah, sad period. Yeah, I remember like when I was like in my 20s, and I was still in Russia. For me, it was a shocking realization that so many men are unmarriageable. You just like they are drunk or they abandoned so when they just look around, it's so like I want to get married, I want to find a boyfriend for myself, but most of men are even drinking or they are bandits. So
Yes, all broken,
choose your
so
best.
damaged, and yeah, I mean, I shouldn't really, dive into a long rambling story, but I had that experience. There was when he wasn't drinking, and he didn't drink in our company. He was a customs officer, and this is 1995, and he'd hang
Hmm.
around the institute where we were studying it was called the Herzen Institute of Nevsky, and he'd come along because he wanted to get a foreign girlfriend, obviously, but he was very polite. He spoke reasonably good English. He was always immaculately dressed and seemed to be very, very courteous. And of course, the girls were like, "Well, this is the first, you know, Russian man we've met who seems to be, quite fanciable, and he's not drinking.
It
This
was
is
a rare find.
fantastic." But the story doesn't
But
end there. We I bumped to him on the metro and said, "Well, I'm going to a party at the общежитие, or the
Mhm,
student hostel where all these girls are staying, and I'm sure they wouldn't mind if he came along." So I
mhm,
took him along,
mhm.
and then he did start to drink, and then he got rather unpleasant. So they
Oh.
threw they threw him out of the party. They threw me out as well. And his reaction was to get his service revolver. First, he started shouting and swearing and throwing bottles around. And then he got his service revolver and started shooting up in the sky.
Wow.
At that point, I'm like, this is going seriously crazy. But yeah, there are there's inner damage. There's inner damage there. Um, I got an interesting question. Probably this is going to be the last segment because we could probably talk for hours upon hours. But I saw an interesting story. I think it was in the Moscow Times, um, and of course it is an idea that no protests are possible, and that everyone is terrified of the regime. And, well, certainly, probably you couldn't protest the war. I mean, I think that's fair to say. But there is this idea that you absolutely cannot mount a protest. And individual pickets, of course, are impossible because they'll come, and if you're individual, they'll just take you away and no one's going to protect you. But this story was fascinating because to raise more money, all sorts of taxes are being introduced. And this was a
Mhm.
story about some new parking charges that were being introduced, and people were very upset about it. And so they drove their cars into town, wherever this was, and they blocked the streets and had a proper, full-on protest, but not based on morality, not based on values, not based on the war or anything like that. It's when their own individual status, their own individual privilege was being curtailed. And suddenly, poof, you've got this like, oh, so some protests are possible. And when they reach a critical mass, it seems the regime may well treat that very differently to, say, individual pickets. And I found this idea that's interesting of, you know, politics to defend rights on the one hand, but politics to defend privilege. And it kind of seems to me that quite a few in the sort of liberal opposition, especially the distant ones abroad, can't really distinguish that much between rights and privilege. And that's not even a uniquely Russian problem. I think there are many in the West who are now having difficulties distinguishing between universal rights and privileges. And some of our political problems that we're experiencing now are down to the inability to distinguish between those things.
I would say this. Like it's very difficult. So just imagine a person for whom, let's say, he's educated person and he's morally like normal. When the war started, he lives in Moscow, let's say, and has a decent job in IT sector, let's say. When the war started, he was shocked. He was literally shaking from horror and the possibility that he could be mobilized. And he has a family, he has a wife, he has kids, he has his parents. And the only way to survive this nightmare of shame and terror is not thinking about it. And if you try to avoid your gaze and train yourself for several years to avoid your gaze, you just don't know what's going on because you carefully avoid anything. I asked my subscribers I have like a small Telegram channel in Russian where I communicate with what was left of my pre-war audience, and I just people around the world, and I ask the people who live in Russia, like, do you see signs of war in your city? And the answer shocked me. People in Moscow, some of them said there's nothing, no any sign. People in Moscow said, I saw it everywhere. It's on the placard, it's on the billboards, so it's a selective vision.
Almost
And
like a sort of amnesia, but a self-imposed amnesia. Yeah.
they really don't see it, and they start arguing in the comments of my channel, like, no, I said, like, I see soldiers everywhere, and other, we don't have any soldiers, we don't see any signs of those z letters or any symbols of the war. We just live our normal life. So when your question was about, like, can they protest of what if they don't see it? They are afraid. What really, this is a huge issue, and I want to address it in my videos and in my books, because people train themselves not to see, not to notice. And when I talk to the Ukrainians, they were shocked that I'm ready to listen, and I was shocked that they were shocked. And the girl who is right now in the front lines in Kharkov, she sent me the pictures of her house. She's from Kherson region. It was flooded when the Russians, the Kafkovskaya
Yeah.
hydroelectric station.
Hydroelectric dam, I guess. Yeah,
Yeah,
yeah.
they blowed out the dam, and she sent me the picture of her house. It was before the war, nice little Ukrainian house, and then she showed me what's going on after the flood. It was like Katrina on steroids. It was just like destroyed. And she said that no one. She tried to send it to her relatives in Russia, and they don't even open it. They don't want to let the war inside their world because it will cause such
Mm.
helplessness and at the same time such distress. It's selfish. But again, I'm a cancer survivor, and my cancer started from when the war started. I know it's serious. And if you don't protect your mind and allows it to absorb all this horror, in several months you can end up in the cancer ward.
And if you
And
have
it's
no opportunity, if you can't see a way to organize, to oppose in any way, you don't have any default solution to that. All you have is
it will happen
a
by its
hopelessness. Yeah.
it will happen this way. So the state makes mistakes all the time, and it's a community help me cumulative effect.
Cumulative, yes. Yeah.
Cumulative. That's difficult word. So and making mistakes will drain money and will drain resources, which means someday the order will be given and nobody will follow it. And we already start seeing it in the small sections. And it will grow more and more because resources go down and the problems go up. And when the like why people don't protest? Are they stupid? Are they blind? Do they want to live in a totalitarian state? No. They have kids, they have parents, they have their life, they have their health, and they know if they protest right now, they will end up in prison. And Russian prison is nothing better than Gulag. It's pretty much the same, and nobody wants to end up there.
Uh,
And some
hmm.
people who are idealists, or some people are just crazy. Yeah, we
And
have.
there's no memory, there's no template for a functioning period of democracy. There's no template where power was peacefully handed over in an electoral process from one leader to the next. We forget that that never happened. Yeltsin deposed Gorbachev, then shelled the parliament to prevent, albeit extremist, but prevent democratic processes taking place, rigged the referendum in 1996 when I was there, with Western assistance, as to be said, and then handed the keys of power straight over to Putin. So there's never been a democratic transition of power.
At least they were a little better than we had better periods and worse periods. But
Yes,
my
yeah.
my like conviction, I'm absolutely certain of this. Like the imperial period and the Bolshevik period caused a severe mental disease on the society. We have the huge, humongous trauma, and this behavior is a result of this trauma. Unfortunately, we didn't have the resources to fix it ourselves. And this is our, that's the grievances. We just can't do anything because the problem is so massive, so huge, and the Chinese nation has the same thing.
Yes.
The- and
Huge trauma from especially, yeah, the previous period, then Mao, who killed
mhm.
people on a scale almost unimaginable.
Yep. They had it. It started in the first quarter of the 19th century, and since then it was the abuse after abuse after abuse after abuse. So these big nations, Russia and China, they both have to deal with this trauma somehow, and both of them pretend bigger and scarier than they are. Both of them project false images and trying to convince that the world can't live without us. We are so strong, we're so cool. No, both societies are ill, seriously ill, and probably the job of intellectuals who care about those societies is try to fix it. It's a very difficult task, and probably I don't know because what I see right now is that everybody is basically enjoying watching those countries to collapse slowly, very slowly, because they have huge. It's a huge structures and they collapse very slowly. Again, it's a pyramid. Pyramid for pyramid to collapse, it can because it can collapse on itself. It can just like lose stone after stone after stone, and it's erosion basically.
And it's
And
not going to be peaceful. It's not a process that can happen in a structured, planned way.
mhm.
Certainly not at the moment. It's when it picks up pace, it's going to be chaotic. And as you say, I don't think the West have any plan for that because they fundamentally don't understand what's coming and what they're dealing with.
Yep, and they think that it's not our business. A lot of people think, but they forgot that China is producing roughly like 30 or 40% of everything.
Yes.
And yeah, Russia is in a worse, much worse state because during those 3.5 years, almost 4 years, the world learned how to live without Russian oil and gas. It's a skill and they learn it. So probably Russia will collapse first. So, did you hear the book of George Friedman about the next 100 years? Have you heard about it?
I've heard of it. I haven't read it, and I'm not
Oh,
too
that's
familiar with the
very
ideas.
interesting.
Yeah.
It was published in 2009, and the chapter one or two, I don't remember. So it was in the very beginning. He said that the major conflict of the world will be Russian aggression against Ukraine, and there will be war, and Russia, of course, will lose this war.
Hmm.
And it was published in 2009. It was interesting. I follow George Friedman on Facebook and still read his articles. He is an interesting guy, telling like what to expect. To expect.
I'll have to look that up. And I
Mhm.
like the Joker Dudayev one as well, which again, predictive power that the Russian sun will set when the Ukrainian sun rises, I think is one of his phrases there. But you've also
Yeah.
explained something which was an abiding mystery to me, which was I was in St. Petersburg in 1998 during the financial crisis. And I remember very distinctly the point at which I decided, okay, enough is enough. I'm going to go and seek my life somewhere else. Firstly, because I'd come to the realization that no matter whether I was able to get wealthy or create a business or whatever, I already knew back then that somebody would come and steal it from me. And nothing that happened subsequently has changed, and now that's accelerating again. So like, I don't want to build something because it will always be destroyed by somebody who is envious of it or somebody who wants to steal it and benefit from it. And then you're lucky if you escape with your life in that circumstance. The other thing was that in that period of extreme economic instability, where shops emptied, people's life savings were wiped out, and it was quite a traumatic period for many people. There was the sudden appearance on almost every, you'd have places, building sites, or gaps in the street where you'd have wooden boards, and then the most virulent racist and anti-Semitic graffiti was popping up everywhere. And then when I spoke to people who lived in the same areas, do you remember? Do you remember what that was like? Because that really freaked me out. And they were like, we didn't see that. I don't remember that happening. It's kind of exactly, it's this selective filtering process.
Exactly, because people try to stay sane. Yeah, that's difficult, especially when you see, like, basically you're bombarded with bad news every single day, and the only way for you to stay sane, as some of my relatives do, they just go to the countryside and turn off TV, don't watch it at all, and like their communication with the outside world is some videos about gardening and birds and cats. That's it.
Watch some
So,
classic black and white Soviet films and forget about everything. Yes.
mhm.
Yeah, yeah, I can see that. And if you have no agency in your life, no sense that you can control or change anything, it's difficult to imagine how your individual exertion or effort or any political statement would change the world. It will destroy you, but you don't see how it would bring about any good or change.
So my idea is that Russia can heal slowly if the world gives it hope. It can't produce this hope from within. I don't see how it's even possible. Alexei Navalny tried, failed. And what I'm talking about is that we need a new narrative about Russia because people exist on narratives. We can do anything without knowing why, whether and after the war will be lost in this way or another, there will be a huge why question and zero ideas of how to overcome it. And then the only way to fix it is to give a new narrative full of dignity. So the nation that can suffer defeat and suffer humiliation, but still finds something inside it, some strength that allows it to rebuild and rebuild in a new way without aggression, without imperialism, without this crazies. And So we need to move this there and support people who actually can bring this dignity to Russian people and show them that everything is possible. You are not rejected. You are not forgotten. Nobody wants to, because their idea of Russophobia is that nobody loves us just because we're Russian. No, nobody loves you because you behave stupidly and aggressively. So don't be like that. And but they need good examples of acceptance. That is why it's very important for, but again, that's a language barrier. It's everywhere. When I see people who can do this job, they don't speak English or any other foreign languages, and they can communicate. Or people who can speak English, they are not politicians, so they are not ready to invest their time into improving stuff. So I was writing half jokingly an advice for the future Russian opposition leader. I said, like, listen carefully, my friend. Like, the universal need, and everybody will support you in this, is safety, because everybody in this country wants safety for himself, for herself, for their children, for their parents, for their businesses, for their money. So if you promise safety, everybody will be happy. They will follow you. From this point, you can build everything. And but before you declare it, have some proofs that you're actually capable of providing safety to the people, to your followers. And I would suggest for this leader to take care of the small community. It could be a village, it could be a town, it could be, if this person is in immigration, then build help provide
Yeah.
safety for the immigrants, because they are desperate. They now have problems with jobs, with bank accounts, with papers, with passports, with status, with everything. And they need a person who will take care of that, organize and find a way how to connect the dots and how to communicate with the outside world. And if you have the portfolio of successful solutions, and if you succeeded in taking care of one group, then you can expand for a larger group.
Yeah.
Just show that you can govern. You can actually take care of your people. And safety, put the safety on the banner, and this is the way to go.
It's
Because
so aligned with the idea that motivates me as well, which is not just radical decentralization, but the new system would have to have someone who was elected, let's say, to manage their stairwell in their apartment, and then their street, and then their community, and then their rayon, and then their oblast, and to reach the top role at the top of the pile, you could only have been voted through in all of those different layers and competed, as you say, from the community level up. And there's an analogy there in the radical decentralization that happened after Maidan, where power was delegated down, right down to the level of individual streets. And you, as you say, you saw leadership emerging, you saw a connection with community, which is then carried forward through into more responsible governance. I mean, it doesn't solve all the problems, and it takes many generations for that fully to flower. But I think you're onto something there.
I hope that there will be a leader with the right personality type who can actually handle this task. It's difficult, and it should not be a person who is after money or status or anything. It should be a true basically father of the nation. It will be a father, it will be a man, because Russia is not ready to accept a woman yet.
But they'll have to earn it and have demonstrable success and come from the
And
bottom up,
again, there's
not
like
from the top
plenty,
down. Yeah.
yeah, plenty very ambitious men who are ready to, they want to be historical figures. Okay, guys, then here you go. We're the advisors. We'll tell you what to do. And then you
Yeah.
go out there and take all the risk, and we'll be sitting here in safety in California.
Yeah. But still, there does need to be an injection of ideas, and because, as you say, there's not just little hope internally in Russia. There seems to be that system doesn't seem to produce, these kind of transformational ideas. Not at the moment. There are periods in history where that was somewhat different, but at the moment, it's not happening. Um, we should probably wrap up there and not exhaust all the themes. Save some over for the next time.
Yeah,
Um,
probably we had like about 2 hours, right?
about an hour and a half, I think. We got about
An
an hour and
hour.
a half in there,
Yeah.
which is
Mhm.
which is a good length. I think if people get really absorbed, then they stick with it for most of that. So, but after that, you start to lose them. They have to go and make a cup of tea or something.
Okay.
Um, it was a real pleasure speaking, and we covered some, fantastically interesting topics and essential topics today. And I strongly recommend people again to check out your channel because there's even more insight there, which I think is absolutely pertinent to what is happening now and what is going to happen over the coming months and years.
Thank
Thank
you.
you. Before we move on to the next question, I'd like to make a personal recommendation that I know you will appreciate. You may have seen my interview last week with the producer of the film series Kyiv of Mine, Ronnie Apteker. Well, I've partnered with them to help raise awareness of what I believe is an important series of films made for a Western audience to help break through absurd stereotypes about Ukraine, some of which, of course, are amplified by Russian propaganda. You can watch these films for free now. Details in a second. Kyiv of Mine is a documentary series about Ukraine's extraordinary capital, which I had the privilege to visit for the first time in January this year. The film production began in 2018, and of course, much has changed since then. It's now 2025, and the story is far from over. Kyiv of Mine is a fast paced, beautifully filmed, humorous, fun, insightful, heartbreaking, moving, and hopeful work. The very antithesis, in fact, of a doom laden and worthy wartime documentary. This is a work that is extraordinarily uplifting. My friend Operator Starsky says the film is made with so much love. The film series will make you laugh and cry. It's the only film about Ukraine that began before the war yet has traced lives through the tumultuous times and which follows the lives of more than a dozen Ukrainians in real time. This is an historic period told through highly personal and emotive stories from Kiev's days of emerging prosperity after the Maidan Revolution through COVID and the full-scale invasion. This film is a breath of fresh air. Ukraine deserves a better conversation in the world, one that isn't centered around war, says Jolyon Ellis, filmmaker on Kyiv of Mine. It's hard not to argue with that, and the filmmakers have fully delivered on this promise. This is essential watching for anyone who calls themselves pro-Ukrainian, but I think it's also vital to get friends, colleagues, and family to watch it too, because the reality is few people have a vivid impression of Ukraine or any direct connection with its people. War is inhumane and abstract. Building an alternative perception is essential for engaging the world with the importance of Ukraine's struggle. A final word from our partners, the makers of Kyiv of Mine. All three films are now available to watch for free on YouTube. Please check out the links to the dedicated website, which tells you more about the film, its subjects, and the filmmakers. Also in the description is a link to the YouTube channel where you can watch the films now. Do let us know in the comments what you think of them and if they inspire you as much as they have inspired me.